This is Chariot.
Among the shadows, living in a lonely land with strangers, we're a band of pilgrims on the move. Dangers burdened down with sorrows, and we're shunned on every hand, but we are looking for a city built above. Yes, we're looking here and looking for a city under where we'll never die.
Hello, welcome to Chariot TV and Church of Christ TV. This is Digital Lectureship. Yamwa kwaba eba and then so jumedia eda yinim no eso unya baso say ya na wakai na waba dofo amane se emre no edu Digital Lectureship ya twen na edu. This day is day 6 of the Digital Lectureship 2024. Have you not read? Yama obia akwaba. Jonathan say, oh, okay. I na bibia boko de.
Boko na so
Nyanko pado me ho ye pa me hu say ye nyanko live kra na obi a sha say send greetings brethren. Yada nas LTBS TV ye chiao pa.
Basadak oti enka ye mo adwo.
Major was so Joe, I'm what to say.
Yeah.
I say, and then I be told the name. I'm say, whilst I was just about entering Nana, ECG for you, click.
Yeah, I realized I was like, wow, Ghana, I had the day. Oh, but Brasha, like this is day 6 of the Digital Lectureship, and
yes.
It's back to back. It's been back to back. So Oka said we'll throw notes out of this lectureship. I'm sure by now we do half of the book because it's been a lot of information from all the speakers. I don't know your comments on the past discussions.
The one we had Brother BJ Clark speaking to us on Have You Not Read? Now, and so there were a lot that he clarified in his teaching at Abua Bebre. You see, the main focus of this lectureship is to combat errors and doctrinal teachings that are affecting a lot of churches here in Ghana and some part of Africa countries. And so the idea, and they say at the end of the day, we will be able to understand what the scripture is saying. We are not here to share our opinions. I always say that if God wanted us to have our opinions, he would have opened the Bible for us to write more every day, since opinions keep changing. And so we are not here to tell you what we think and what we think are the best. We are here to look at what the scripture is saying. And so that's what we did on day 1. Day 2, there's an error going on in Ghana saying that if you are not a Christian, then you are not under the law of Christ. And so then if somebody married 4 wives, 5 wives, and then he's coming into Christ, he can select any of them to come into Christ. He just have to have 1 wife when he's a Christian. And that is not true. He must go back to his first wife. And that is what Brother Aaron explained, telling us that he must repent. And then we had day 3, where Brother Listower came in and said that, okay, I made all these teachings that we are doing. If we could stay pure and faithful to our wives, if we can live in sexual purity, then we wouldn't have all these problems coming up. So he taught us living happy in your marriage and then also staying sexually pure. And then day 4, we had Brother Georgia telling us more about bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. And that was also to, try to manage our marriages so that we will not fall into all these troubles. And then we had day 5. Day 5 was back to back. It was the first session in the morning.
Day 5, no, let me talk about day 5. Because day 5, I was sitting back producing the show. I was like,
don't talk about the number of hours we use.
Talk about
what we discussed.
Back to back for almost 4 hours.
Yes.
And you know the surprising thing? We had people watching throughout.
Yes, yes.
We must commend that.
If you are discussing, if you are discussing the youth and dating, okay, there are a lot of confusion out there. People think that when we say dating, it means that you can just do things that married people are supposed to do. We are Christians, and we can use what these so-called celebrities and the world out there are doing as our standard, okay? So we need to dictate the pace for them to follow. We don't have to be their followers or disciples. We need to do things for them to watch us and learn from us. And so we need to go the Christian way of dating, and that's what we did on day 5. And then the evening, which was yesterday.
Morning and afternoon. Then in the evening.
Yes. Then in the evening, we had Brother Don Blackwell speaking to us, married, divorced, remarried, as taught in the Bible. And he touched on so many things. One of the things that he touched on was what God has joined together. God joined people together, and he is the only one who can separate. So today we're going to zoom into that proper. That is what we're going to do. So he did a lot of touching on of almost all the things that we are discussing, but we have to open some of them, really open them up and discuss detail as to what we are talking about when we say God says don't put asunder. So that is what we're going to discuss tonight, and then open it up for a lot of understanding of what it means. And so that is what we're having tonight. And tomorrow we're going to have consummation of marriages. Now, so let me explain a little before we proceed. You know, when we say consummation of marriage, a lot of people don't really understand what we mean by the
we are now the battery.
Consummation of marriage is that when you marry and your husband or your wife, you've not slept with the person, does that constitute marriage? So worry now we only obano and so that is all that we're going to discuss tomorrow. And then we have other things coming up after that. But let's concentrate on tonight. Now, so I know one of the programs that you really wish to attend is the
polishing the pulpit. I can wish list. No, it's on my wish list.
You better load yourself with a lot of money. When you become a rich man, they will give you
like you and Jonathan. Yes,
I beg you.
Yes,
I beg you. So tonight, that's what we are going to look at. But so we have our speaker on board, and then I'm sure we will go back to him, and then we will discuss a few things, introduce him to. I think this might be his first time interacting with people in Ghana, and so I'm not sure, but I want to believe that. So we would like to introduce him, and then when we hit 50 people, and now we are on 30 people watching right now. So if we're able to grow, we will start.
We've had some people sending where they are watching from, and surprisingly, we have some people. I think today, if my memory serves me, today will be the first time we are getting people from Sweden.
I think the person has been coming. Sweden.
Oh, okay. Then this is my first time actually paying attention to that. Then from Stockholm, Sweden. That's very interesting. Greetings to all the
we have Sweden. We have somebody watching from Tadi, Ifyukuma. We have I've seen a name here that is familiar. We have someone watching from Techima. Yes. Atom TV is from Doom and many others. Didi.
Please acknowledge our people too. All the way from Sunyani Abisim. Yes.
Okay. Very well. Abisim for Yecham. Why?
Okay. Then we have the first person who joined even before we went live.
Hey, you should have mentioned his name. By the way, we have someone to watching from Hatchville.
Hatchville. Hey.
Yeah, that is Hatcho. No, Hatcho. Hatcho. Hatcho.
Okay, Sweden. Is that Sweden for Ramodosmo? Okay.
So we have a lot of people watching. I know that Ifekuma Church of Christ, they have the members broadcasting it and our church information center. So it goes into the community. And we have other people who have gathered and they are watching. And so we send greetings to all these people who are doing that. This is Chariot TV, a platform that you come to study God's word, and we appreciate you so much.
Okay.
That's all. And
I say Jonathan, and the questions nearby, but and then maybe kind quotes from programs lectureship we are now, and you have to comment which preacher, which speaker said this.
Hey,
I
also never.
So my ready. Me kind quotes back now. I check which speaker said this. Okay, mommy, send away anything. Okay, that way there for the. It is possible for someone in authority to say, "Don't do this," and then for someone under that to go out and do it anyway. I mean, this would be. It is possible for someone in authority to say, "Don't do this," and then for someone under that to go out and do it anyway. Preacher Ben Ekanwe or Digital Lectureship 2024. Find a kind. Rashadak, what are you trying to say?
I want for Bicha. It's simple. It's simple. Where does that be Bicha?
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, okay.
It's Joe. So let me switch to the our guest tonight, and then have some few interaction before we're going to go live with his preaching. Remember, say yes, that is Brother Alan Webster. Say good evening.
Good evening. It's good to see you, Shadrach.
Yes, sir. It's good to see you. It's good to see you. So this is Chariot TV, and we are glad that we have you here live on our program.
It's great to be with you. Been looking forward to this. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So we just want you to know some few things about you before we proceed, because this I guess this is your first time on Chariot TV, and so we would like to know certain things about you before we proceed. So you are Alan Webster. You have been with Jacksonville. Is it Jacksonville? All right.
Yes, I preached in Jacksonville, Alabama for 25 years. And finished that work at the end of 2020 and went into preacher training. Came to Memphis School of Preaching, where I met you, and teach there full time. And I also teach in the Georgia School of Theology. I do a lot of that by Zoom, and I teach over there in the summertime when I'm off from Memphis. So I do teaching and travel preaching, and currently in a gospel meeting in Martin, Tennessee. Enjoy planning PTP and involved with House to House, Heart to Heart.
That's what I want to talk more about. Heart to Heart, House to House, Heart to Heart. There are a lot of people in Ghana who receive your what do you call it, your newsletters and all that. And so tell us more about that. And then we will, after we've talked about Heart to Heart, we will switch to PTP, and then you tell us more about that.
All right. Years ago, we decided we wanted to reach out into our community when I preached in Mississippi. And we worked it out to send a newsletter, a teaching paper to every mailbox in that community. And so we did that. And then I moved to a different church, Jacksonville Church, and they wanted to do it in that community. So we did it in both communities. And then I had a cousin who was preaching, and he said, could we send this out where we are? So we worked it all out. Long story short, church could use it and has used. It's currently goes into, I guess, all 50 states. It has gone into 175 nations of the world. And there have been about 300 million copies that have been circulated since the 1990s. And it's just amazing what he's done with it. Through those years.
Wow. Let me explain that. Let me translate that to our viewers. And random say Mutia brother Alan Webster na a preacher Mississippi, and also started be a friend heart to heart. Someone who's adewe about me bosohaya and house to house. Some of you have heard about house to house and school of evangelism. He started it, and then it was small. He moved to Jacksonville in Alabama, and then he continued with that. Now they have printed that thing, that newsletter that goes out with a lot of lessons in it, about 300 million, right?
That's 3 million? That's how many all time have received it. Every year, this year we'll mail to about 14 million families. This year. 14
million people. And last time I was looking at some of the tracts that you've written, and I saw on what's the name, the website that you use to write these things, and I saw about 7,100 and something writings that you have done so far. Tell us about that, the writing that you do.
There probably are about 5 million tracts that are in print currently. There are somewhere around 500 different titles of tracts that are ordered on all Bible subjects. And so those go out and really took on a life of its own. That was just a supplement to House to House, Heart to Heart early on, because we wanted to be able to teach the people between issues so they could request tracts and get those and read them. But then churches started using them that don't even send out apparently house to house. They just wanted material to go out into their, to be available for people to read Bible subjects. And so that's been a real pleasant sideline, I guess, now we started writing those probably 25 years ago, maybe something like that. I do about 30 new titles a year. So those over the years have added up to several hundred that go out now.
Interesting. And then the PTP, how did it start, and what is it? Because a lot of people hear about it here, but they don't really know what goes into it. So polishing the pulpit, what is the whole thing? How did it start?
Yeah.
Because I know we have about 5,500 people who attended last year, right?
That's right.
You are yet to do this year.
We've done one this year, and we're doing the second one in next week. PTP started out 30 years ago. This is the 30th year of it, and there were only 3 of us, friends, that got together to write sermons and share ideas about preaching. And then it just steadily grew. More preachers came, and then we started inviting speakers to come. And after a while, we had classes for elders, deacons, youth ministers, wives. It just grew to all members of the church. And it grew from 3 to 50 to 150 to 300. We moved to Sevierville, Tennessee. I guess it was about 2008, somewhere along in there. And it was just under 1,000 people attending then. And it just grew a lot more once we were in different locations before that, but it got too big to move around. So we stayed in Sevierville in the Great Smoky Mountains. And it's grown to, as you mentioned, 5,500 last year. And that facility really is only designed for about 5,000. So it was really crowded and you couldn't get in the classes sometimes that you wanted to be in. So we decided we would have a second one. And we just had that one in July in Branson, Missouri. We had 1,937 people come the first year, which we were very excited And it was also completely full, the venue that we were in. So next year we're moving to a larger venue in Branson. So we'll have 2 PTPs moving forward. And this year we were hoping to move about 1,000 people over to the other location to free up some space, since it won't really hold as many as we're coming. And that looks like about what we're going to have. We'll be in the 4,000, 4,500, somewhere that range. So it should be just about the right amount. And we have 175 speakers coming. They'll present about 500 Bible lessons, and all those will be available once PTP is over. And we make them available to the brotherhood, and they can watch or listen at their leisure. A lot of people, will do that throughout the year. So we want PTP to be active in people's spiritual growth year round.
Sir.
Year round. And
Yes, really appreciate that so much. And last thing before we proceed, spiritual sword is one of the news letters, and I don't know what I should call it, booklet, tract that were coming so much in Ghana. When people heard about the close down of what's the name? Is it Get Well Church of Christ? It was a blow, and a lot of people called me and they were like, so what happens and all that. And thankfully, house to house, heart to heart, pick it up. If you can tell us more about what is going on with the spiritual lectureship and the print out spiritual sword newsletters and all that. What is the way forward? What is going on with that?
The Get Well Church did close their doors, and their members, a few members that were left there, moved to the congregation. So they contacted us, the editor, Alan Harris, and I talked about it. And long story short, we took on that work. Brother Harris is still the editor of the paper, and it's under the East Ridge Church of Christ Elders now, which is where House to House is. And we were able to just really continue the work unchanged. Everybody that was getting it before still gets it. And now it's in a stable congregation that has a good eldership and should be, at least for the foreseeable future, no changes. As long as Brother Harris can serve as editor, that's what we want. And we're excited about it. It's on good financial footing. We have lectureship coming up in October, the first one that will not be in Memphis. It will be in East Ridge, Tennessee, the greater Chattanooga area, and all the speakers are invited, committed, and they're all scheduled to be there. So we're excited to be able to continue not just the journal, but also the lectureship that's been going on, I think, about 54 years. So that will also be unchanged moving forward.
Yes, sir. We really appreciate you so much for pulling up some effort to sustain that work. It's really encouraging to some of us. And Brethren, if Brother Webster, is a very humble, very, very humble man. And trust me, if you love to listen to him teach and guide you, if you want to be a preacher and preach the sound word, you would like to sit at his class and study. And I'm sure very soon you'll be doing some of the most classes, right? That people can join in here. Those who cannot get their visas to come to the US, they will be able to, study still under your feet. Brother Alan Webster is our guest tonight, and we are very, very confident that he will do justice to what we have on the table. Brother Webster, thank you so much for joining. We're going to play a video. After the video, you see yourself and your interpreter on it, and you'll be good to go.
All right. Thank you.
Among the shadows, living in a lonely land with strangers, we're a band of pilgrims on the move. Dangers burdened down with sorrows, and we're shunned on every hand, but we are looking for a city built above. Yes, we're looking here and looking for a city under where Savior, glory
All right, welcome in. We're glad to be a part of the program today.
Mo akwa ba na me ni age say me nso mabetnya akonya na me nemu edu dwumadi.
We're going to study from Matthew 19, verses 4 through 12. Jesus,
Ye ba besua de afri asempa no se ne Matthew Troy ti dun kon ni mu enan eba nsia no.
Jesus was asked 183 questions while he was on earth, and perhaps the question that is recorded and answered in Matthew 19 is the most controversial question he was ever asked.
Yesu Kristo abra oye ne dwumadie na onante wiase nipa pi na busa ne nsem bebre nsemusa oha e de owotwe miensa na nipa busa no na so bigiri ye se asebusa e de achinyedie ba ye pa e de ye beka ho asemani.
Let's read together what the Pharisees came, and this was a carefully crafted question. We're going to read from, and I encourage you to open your Bible and read with us. But Matthew 19, verse 3, Scripture says, go ahead.
Yankin Matthew asempaditi edukuri mu miensa eba no na me pese me hye nkran so so be fa Bible no wakin kan di bechi.
The Pharisees also came unto him, tempting him, and saying unto him, Is it lawful for a man to put away his wife for every cause?
Na Pharisee for the ba ne nche be so no hwe say obi wo ho kwan say asem biara nti ogya ne yere ana na.
And so you notice their motivation first. They're not interested in a Bible answer to a Bible question. They don't want to know something so they can be pleasing to God or go to heaven. They're tempting him. They want to entrap Jesus in some kind of controversy so that they might be able to accuse him, even arrest him, and as they ultimately did, to execute him.
Unu wadwin pa na odidi sa dwumadie na wadwin po ene se ebi obeso oso nyankopan ni ana obeso hu bibi efa nyankopan henie hu na oso nyankopan ni daache. Na emom de na omputa nyina ne se opese otu Yesu Kristo kuti na onya no ene nipa o wiase na nipa o sabre no oni nya asem.
So they asked him a question about marriage, divorce, and remarriage. That was a hot button issue in his day, but it's also a question that brings emotion a lot of times in discussions in our day.
Na ombusa na sem efa awade ene awarejaye ene aware fufu biu. Na sabre na asembusa na asembusa eji hini eyiye na yenso yepensi no asembusa nipa pi na ta ebusa pa.
And in our language, they ask him this question: Is it permissible to get a divorce for any reason? And they're asking that question from an Old Testament perspective, but it's the same thing that people want to know today.
Well, yenkasa mu no obusa Yesu Kristo say obi a ho kwan se ojai aware ana na de nti a obusa sa asem yi wo mfonyina na wo twa efira pam da mu a na ode ba na enu ntina na ejina so na odi busa sa asem.
In verse 4, Jesus answered and said, so he is not going to give his personal opinion about it, although he was the Son of God and certainly had the authority to do that. He did not give them a summary of what the rabbis of his day were teaching about it. He did not say, well, this is what most people believe about it. Instead, he went back to the Old Testament. He went actually beyond the law of Moses. He went all the way back to the very beginning when marriage started, and there he found the answer to their question.
So Yesu eyiwano nanso Yesu ana oya nyankopon ba no wan kire won de no no adwene anase osusuo won ho. Wona sa no kire ana wan mo de Jewfo akire-kirefo no susuo ene won kire-kire mu tofa amfa mmomo. Ana wan sanso ankasa nkire won de nipa pi na susuo e wasem no ho. Nemom ode won kọ kane no ode won try impo Mose ahyehyede a ebaaye no ekọ mfitiase no ho asem. Na ho na ode on hyase.
All right, let me give you a preview of the rest of the lesson. What we're going to do is look at 4 different reasons that Jesus said not to get a divorce. 4 reasons. All right, so I'll give you the 4 reasons, and then we'll go back into this text and analyze each one of them. But the 4 reasons are Jesus said not to get a divorce, number 1, because of the precedent that was set at the beginning.
Mame ni nkan ema o ansansem sensemfo yi na yenhwe ne mako nan yehwe wi a na yasa akọ Bible gina so mu na yasa ahwehwe niema a Bible no kan ye fa sansem a mekan hu na yesua de di nkan a Yesu Kristo ema ye se eni kwan so obi jai awade.
Number 2, because of the
can you repeat number 1? Can you repeat the number 1?
Oh, number 1 is the precedent set in the garden, the precedent. Number 2 is the command.
Okay.
Precedent means it's a legal term. You understand?
Yeah, okay. So the din kan ene say nhwehweso a yehunu edi ntro no mu aye to so mienu a oka enso ohye ana emra Nyankopon hyehye.
So precedent and the command to cleave to your mate. That's number 2. Number 3 is the design of marriage. 2 people become one, and it's painful to break that up.
Ana de to so miensa do a ana opa nipa mienu ekanya na omo kabo mu ye baako sa de sa odo no ana ope no ya se obi betitimu.
And number 4 is the will of God. He says in the last part of this text, he says, what's the will of God? What does God want for marriages?
So the to so enan Nyankopon epe na Yesu kire mu Nyankopon pe a owo awade ho.
Now let's go to the first one and talk about the precedent that was recorded in Genesis chapter 2 when God first made man and woman and married Adam and Eve together.
Yeni nkan ko de di nkan na yenwene ho ne ehunu de Nyankopon susu ana Nyankopon hwe so a ode maaye wo edi ntro no mu na yenhwe se ne Nyankopon ye oba ne bema ho.
God does not do things by accident. He doesn't do things that aren't thought out or well planned. And so when he brought them together, he had a plan for the human family that extended beyond the initial couple in the Garden of Eden. This was a precedent that was put in place that would be true in subsequent generations, their children, grandchildren on down the line.
Nyankopon ye bibi a onsusu hu ana wonwene hu yie enya de eto ni mpofrim na waye bibi na emo ade bi a woye no odwene ho susu ehye da ye ade no na abaye nhweso ama nipa wonchirima no.
Let's read verse 4 together. Matthew 19:4. And he answered and said unto them, have you not read that he which made them at the beginning made them male and female? So he says, you don't really need me to answer your question because you have a Bible that answers your question. Haven't you read your Bible? Don't you have the book of Genesis? Have you not gone back and read what God said at the very beginning?
Enti yankenkan wo eyimu enan no say no bua won say monkenkan say mfitiase no de obo onipa no onya oba ne berima na obo won. Enti Yesu Kristo na ohia say oyiwa no nsem wo pese wo ka nyina kye won say enti muni mu kyerɛsɛm na muni kyerɛsɛm ansem a mbu sɛm media monkom mu kyerɛsɛm no mu na mo yanko kenkan kyerɛsɛm ne yɛhwɛ sɛ ne sitie ebi sɛ kyerɛsɛm no na asɛm no wo.
And the passage he's referring to, of course, is Genesis 2:18 through 24. That's the original record of the first marriage that Moses recorded of what had happened at the very beginning when Adam and Eve were still in the Garden of Eden. God brought them together and married them, and they were together for the rest of their lives.
Enti de baby a Yesu Kristo etwe adwe na se onkenkan ye no Moses hu medi nkan etemienu ni mu du wotwe eba enne bre di nkan Nyankopon hyehyɛ awade sa awade bre no ana Nyankopon Yesu etwe adwe agina so se Nyankopon ye oba ne bema ana wo mienu o hyehyɛ se won tena se mo.
Now in a legal environment, if a question comes before a court and that question has already been answered by a previous court, it's the same question, then they do not restudy that. They just refer back to the previous case and they can go back and see what was decided because that's the legal precedent.
Well, emramu no any baby amra ya adwuma no wo say asem ye di nkan aba na emranimfo ana otemufo na buafo ana wobua bem wasi asem ni gina ewo ho a saa de ne ye nhweso nti si asem kro na aba bio mu a ye hia se ye sa adwenwe asem no ho ye ne se ye kɔ ba bi ahweso ne wo ne akɔhweso ne ya dwene ho ne ya ka de ye o se ye ka nti saa ho asem ana o kye adwene so.
And that's what Jesus is doing here. He's not inventing new doctrine to answer their question. He's just going back to the precedent of how God originally set it up. Now, there are 4 precedents in this account.
Enti de Yesu ye ne se ne ankyekere fofo na Yesu di ba Yesu ye ne say asam wa Nyankopon di ka bua dadaada edi ntro mu no eno na Yesu Kristo atabiri na odi aba beto wonim se wonhwe na wonhwe se Nyankopon si bua no fa ebi se enya ade foforo bia na Yesu Kristo kire na sa nhweso yi no e woni ma nan bia wo mu opese oyi kire.
So in the beginning, God set up one man, one woman for one lifetime. Now, so there are four things implied in this. Number one, marriage is a primary relationship. It supersedes parent-child and friend relationships. Anything else is the number one relationship except for a man's relationship with God.
Enti de din kan ne say awade eye ade a edimu ade din kan ade ten a edin kan wo nipa ni nkita hodie nyina mu enti eno de din kan a otwe adwingyina so.
Number two, the original precedent forbade homosexuality, for God provided a woman for a man.
De tasu mienu ene say de Nyankopon ye we di ntro mu no ekire en say oba ne oba wade na bema ne bema wade no nhweso bone nti Yesu Kristo etwe adwigina so say si esuan de Nyankopon ebu aye ewa apamda dan no mu ana Mose mre di nkan no mu a de ehu ne say oba ne bema awade ana Nyankopon apene so.
Number three, this precedent forbade polygamy, which is having more than one marriage companion. One cannot be one man with several wives or a wife with several husbands. 1 + 1 is how God set it up.
De to so miensa nhweso a ehu efri edi ntrom ho nhweso a Nyankopon de ma ye nso ne say sa wade a Nyankopon hyehye ye no oba ne bema baako bema baako awade Nyankopon nye anhyehye awade dodo a obarima bi betimi anya mma bebre ade aya awade anase oba bi betimi anya mma bebre ade aya awade Nyankopon hyehye no ne sa ne tie.
Number four, God made no provision for replacement or for divorce.
De to so nan ene say Nyankopon tirimupo mu no wanfa awade gyaye anase ode obi esi oyira namu amba.
So God had the power to make many wives for Adam. He could have made a wife who's tall, another one short, another one thick, another one thin. He could have made all different varieties, but he did not make any replacement for Eve. She was to be his companion for the rest of his life. And that was 930 years.
Nyankopon tumi se oye ne ma bebre ko betima ye oba tiatia ama Adam no asa ye baako kokko no ye baako tuntum na wa ye baako de ne honam da so no ye baako de oware baako tietia baako kese ni nyina ko betima ye ni nyina ama Adam nanso so wanye ne sa de oye ne se oye oba baako pe ana ode ne ma Adam se Adam nkwa na nyina Adam nkwa na nso so no mfie ohankono achi ana omotena ye.
This also shows us that the philosophy that is often perpetrated around us, that this world evolved into its present state, is not true.
Wezu chire nse nyansasam ka nipa pi adwene esusuo eka se wiase a yehui eyade a efiri biribi mu ana anyini abesese no ne sa ne tie enye no kore.
It shows us, one, that the world had a beginning. In the beginning, this says.
Matter
is not eternal. God is eternal. It shows us, number two, that man and woman were at the beginning. There were not millions of years before humans were on the earth. It also shows that man did not evolve, he was made.
And it
shows that there are only two genders, male and female.
Esaso chen say yewo ekuo mienu pe obema ne oba gender no brofo no the tree no minya but ekuo mienu pe obema ne oba.
And that God's original plan was for there to be heterosexual marriage, not same-sex marriage.
Nyankopon hyehyɛ ene sɛ obema ne oba ane wade ana oba ne bema ane wade enye bema ne bema ana oba ne oba awade ane Nyankopon hyehyɛ.
All right, so our first point is that God intends for married couples to stay together because that's how he set it up at the beginning. That's the precedent.
So nsɛm edi nkan a yɛde hyɛ adwene mu ne sɛ Nyankopɔn pɛ sɛ ɔbaa ne ana bɛrima ne ɔbaa tena se afebɔɔ efisɛ saa ne nhwɛso a ɔyɛɛyɛ wɔ edi nturo no.
The next point that we see in Jesus' response, we'll read together from verse 5. It says, and said, for this cause shall a man leave his father and mother, and shall cleave to his wife.
Yɛtɔ so a mepɛ sɛ metwe adwene gyina so yɛhunu wɔ eyimu enum no mesrɛ mo yɛkenkan Matthew etidunku ne yimu enum no ɔse ɛna ɔka sɛ yɛnti ana onipa begya n'agya ne ne na ɔde ne ho akɔfam ne yere ho na wɔn baanu ayɛ honam korɔ.
So this is designed to go beyond Adam and Eve because they did not have a father and mother. They were the original father and mother. So this obviously was meant for their descendants.
Saa Bible gyina so ɔka yei no Nyankopɔn ɛyɛ ne sɛnea ɛbɛtra Adam ne Eve efiri sɛ Adam ne Eve deɛ na oni agya ne ɛna sɛnea yɛn yɛwɔ nni na mmom Nyankopɔn tiri mu pom nti ɔhyehyɛ ne saa na ɔka saa ne sɛ ɛyɛ yɛn entia efiri sɛ yɛn ne ɛwɔ agya ne ɛna.
So there are two words here that are important: leave and cleave. One is to... Go ahead.
Yɛwɔ nsɛmfua mmienu a ehia na mepɛ sɛ ɔhyɛ ne nso sɛ ofiri hɔ na ɔkɔfam.
So leaving the family of origin, where one has grown up, leave and then turn to a new family, create a new family, and cleave together to that person and those children.
Enti ɛwɔ sɛ onipa nyini a ofiri ɛne yɛ deɛ di nkan na wafiri no na ɔde ho akɔbɔ abusua foforɔ na wafam ne yere ho.
The word cleave is a strong word. It means literally to be glued together.
Saa kasa bɔfo kasa cleave a ne twi ne yɛ fam no ɛyɛ ade mu ɔdi yie paa efiri sɛ ɛkyerɛ sɛnea ɛwɔ kɔpɛ shoemaker for glue a wɔde afa nneɛma mu abɔ mu no saa mfamfam deɛ no na wɔde afa nneɛma abɔ mu no saa na ɛtwe adwene gyina so.
Now divorce is the opposite of cleaving because divorce is dividing. Cleaving is staying together.
Awaregyaeɛ ɛyɛ n'abirabɔdeɛ saa famfam no n'abirabɔdeɛ ne awaregyaeɛ efi sɛ awaregyaeɛ no ɛyɛ sɛ ɔtete mu ba famfam deɛ no yɛ sɛ ɔka fam.
So when one chooses to divorce, he is doing the opposite of what God commanded. So we see in the first... Go ahead.
Nti sɛ onipa bɔ ne tirim sɛ ɔpɛ sɛ ɔgya awadeɛ a ɛnɛ na ɔyɛ adeɛ a etia Nyankopɔn asɛm na ɔyɛ adeɛ a ɛyɛ Nyankopɔn abirabɔdeɛ.
So Jesus said, do not get divorced, number one, because that's not how God set up the world. He wants families to stay together. Number two, because it violates the command of God to cleave to one another.
Nti Yesu Kristo mpɛ sɛ onipa ebegyae awadeɛ. If you say they didn't kind of say Nyankopɔn hyehyɛ yi mu Nyankopɔn hwɛ so ɔde maa yɛ wɔ edi nturo mu no saa na tie sɛ nipa ne kwan so nipa gya awadeɛ. De tɔ so mmienu nso ne sɛ so nipa na adwene sɛ obegya awadeɛ a ɛne na ɔto Nyankopɔn mmara nso.
Number 3, the next part of the verse says that one should not get a divorce because it breaks the design of God.
Deɛ tɔ so mmiɛnsa a deɛ nti ani kwan sɛ onipa egya awadeɛ ɛne sɛ so nipa yɛ sɛ obegya awadeɛ a na kyerɛ sɛ ɔsɛe Nyankopɔn ɛhyehyɛeɛ a wayɛ.
The last part of verse 5 says, and they twain shall be one flesh. They twain, that's two, shall become one flesh.
Deɛ etwa to a ɛwɔ eyimu enum no ɛne sɛ na wɔn baanu ayɛ honam korɔ. Wɔn baanu ayɛ honam korɔ. Ɛne ne ansɛmfo a ɔpɛ sɛ ɔtwe adwene gyina so.
Now, this phrase, one flesh, does refer to the conjugal relation, the sexual relationship in marriage, but more than this.
One bed no I honam krono. Ejina ho ema enna ho kitamudi a eka won bomu. Nanso etra sample.
So a husband and wife begin to work together in life. They have the same goals. They rear the same children. They spend the same money. They work together for the same end of life, retirement, and then heaven. So they are becoming an entity and not two individuals.
So okunu ene oyere eyenkofo a woka won abom na wonya ade kro, wonya nsusuye kro, wonya enisuade hunu kro, o ma a wotete wonyina abom kro. Wonyina abo ohomodin se won sikasam so eni nyina ye kro. Wo bomodin se obomodin ani wonyina akọ heaven kro. Nti adwe ni nyina ye baako na wo mienu no wonya baanu na mom oye nipadua baako.
Malachi 2:10-17, that context says that God hates divorce.
Odifo Malaki etemienu no saa ba bi a etemienu no ho no etwea dwi gira so say Nyankopon ochiri awarijaye.
And one of the reasons he hates it is because it hurts those involved so badly. It hurts the couple, it hurts their children, it hurts their church or their community. It really hurts the whole nation.
Yenti Nyankopon echiri awarijaye ene say awarijaye ne ha wona of awade no ho. Bi di nkan ha awarefo na ankasa, ha womma, ha asafo, ha omman. Enti awarijaye de ha enti Nyankopon se ochiri awarijaye.
So I used to work in woodworking some.
Na oye adwuma o baby.
So you could take two 2x4s or two boards and glue them together. Like if you want to put them in a wall to make a sturdy wall.
It's no ye adwuma wo baby a na o ye nwia ho adwuma. Enti obetimi afa 2x4 nwia na wo de glue so make afọ glue na glue for a mo de ye nwia ho adwuma no na o de afa mu na wa ka afa ho na o de ahye edan bi enchen baby.
But later you tear down this structure and you have those boards and you want to reuse them.
Ebia echire ho no na afa ububu dan yagu. Na so ububu dan yagu no na wo hia se sa 2x4 mienu no peso o sa so de ye adwuma biu.
So you break them apart.
Enti o ba mu.
So when you're broken apart, they do not break a straight line like they were originally, because part of this board will stay on this board and part of this board will be glued to this board. It will break unevenly because it will break along the wood grain.
Enti se opeso usa be yisu bi odi a na wo titimu a de ba ekoba ne se utimu a entimu ten na entimu pepepe se na etie kane kakra be kwa ha na ayamonchimonka achiachia na etantantan santi ana otwe adwigina so.
That's what happens when two people get married and they build their lives together for a year, 7 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever the number of years, and then they break apart. Well, it hurts because they've grown together and you're breaking apart something that was never meant to be apart again.
Sana esie se awarefo so betiti omu if say nipa mienu na ye ka bo omu na waka wa bo mu no na wo mienu atena imfie bebre bi o imfie ba ko imfie mienu imfie bi onu imfie bebre emfa ho ni imfie kudo mpa watena na mom se bredru na wo ye wadwene se obetiti wo mu a afi na monchimon kasam a na wo twe adwegina so ana se entimu yiye a na ode edua ne ye mfato ho na aba musa se how beba omu mienu ntem.
It was not God's design. His design was always to be together.
Now we
go to the next verse. And we see the fourth point. I will review before we read. So we have precedent, we have command, we have design, and fourth, we have the will of God.
Enti yekwa eyimu insiano ana eyimu ediho na awose opese obo enyoma nan a okase enhye ne nso no tofa ebio yedi nkan ye wonhweso ye toso mienu ye wo mmra ye toso miensa ene se ye wo yɛwɔ mmara yɛwɔ hyehyɛsoɔ ana yɛwɔ Nyankopɔn pɛ ɛho asɛm na ɛno ho asɛm na wɔbɛka atwe gyina so.
Verse 6. Wherefore they are no more twain, but one flesh. What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder. And then
Yimunsia no say, enti na wonye baanu bio, na mmom wɔyɛ honam korɔ. Enti deɛ Onyankopɔn ɛde abɔ mu no, ma onipa ntiti mu.
So who joined the two together? Who did this? God.
Why the can on baanu bɔ mu? Why na yes ah?
Not the courthouse, not the community, not the individuals. God joined them together. That was the will of God when two people married.
Enye mmranimfo ana mmrahyɛbea ana ɛka wɔn bɔ mu. Enye ɔman a wɔn ti mu ana aborɔno a wɔn ti mu na ɛka wɔn bɔ mu. Enye obi bia na ɛka wɔn bɔ mu. Nyankopɔn na ɛka wɔn bɔ mu.
When two people are having marriage trouble and one goes to a counselor or a friend, and you will often hear something like, I am not happy. She is not treating me like I deserve to be treated. I want out of this. Do you hear the personal pronouns there? I, me, my. Where does God enter into this? You see, my will is to be separate from her or separate from him. But what about the will of God?
Enti sɛ nipa mienu ebe bɔ wɔn tirim sɛ ɔpɛ sɛ onya ntitimu na okohunu obi a otufoɔ ana ofutufoɔ bi na osusu wasɛm kyerɛ wɔn ho a mpa pii no deɛ ɔta ate ne sɛ me nsɛm nko a na ɔta ate sɛ me ɔmpa me nyɛ hwee omume ɔnyɛ mi sɛ sa me nsɛm nko a na deɛ ɔtwe adwene gyina so sɛ ɛbere bɛ ne Nyankopɔn bɛwura saa asɛm mu ebi sɛ deɛ woka nyina yɛ me nyame ɛwɔ he.
So my will is to be subjected to the Father's will. I want what he wants.
Enti me pɛ deɛ ɛwɔ sɛ me de hyɛ Nyankopɔn paase. Enti ni kwa sɛ me deɛ me pɛ no ɛwɔ sɛ yɛ de Nyankopɔn pɛ. Ne de Nyankopɔn nyɛ deɛ me pɛ na Nyankopɔn pɛ ne mu de Nyankopɔn pɛ sɛ yɛ hɔ no ɛno na ɛwɔ sɛ me yɛ.
So 4 reasons not to get a divorce.
Enti nneɛma 9 nti ana ni kwa sɛ unya awadeɛ.
But then Jesus is asked another question by his disciples.
Na nesuafo no ebusa ne nsɛm foforɔ.
Well, first another question from his enemies, and then we'll see his disciples. Verse 7. They say, why did Moses then command to give a writing of divorcement and to put her away? So a follow-up question. What about the verse that says that the Old Testament verse that says they could get divorced?
Enti wana na one ne nyadwe na opese otu ne kotie no ebusa na sem e wo verse 7 no say na oka kire no say na ede enti na Moses share won say o share mmra awaregya ye homa Moses share say wo ma awaregya ye homa na onyan no.
Jesus answers beginning in verse 8. And this, before I read this though, this is a reference to Deuteronomy 24, 1 through 3, where you have the only teaching in the Old Testament about divorce besides just acknowledging that it existed.
Enti baby a ansa na obekan Yesu anu yi no otwe adwe agina say baby a mu busa sa asem we Deuteronomy Moses mo metoso num etie aduonu nan ni mu baako eba no na eno ho asem ana omo ngina so omo di busa na eno otwe adwe agina so.
That text says that if a man married a wife and then he found some uncleanness in her, he could divorce her. She could marry someone else. He could marry someone else. And there were two. Go ahead.
Enti se sa asem sa Bible gina so no na echeche se obarima bi bore oba na nani so onya nani so animunyam a obetimi akopɛ sɛ ɔmontwira awaregya krata ama no na wade ogya oba no kwan.
There were two ideas among the Jewish teachers about what the uncleanness was.
Na yewo adwene mienu a ɛfa Jew akyerɛkyerɛfoɔ mpanyimfoɔ a ɔmo kyerɛkyerɛ fa de entene wɔ nani so no ɛho asɛm.
One, there was a conservative view that it referred to sexual uncleanness, being unfaithful to the maid.
Yewo wo mu ana omo de ahihia dwene ana conservative brofo kasa mu no na echeche say de Yesu Kristo eka ho asem uncleanness ana de ntene o Yesu Kristo eka ho asem no eye enam nkitahudie ho asem ana Yesu Kristo ka.
The other view was very liberal, and it was essentially that a husband could divorce his wife just because he didn't like her anymore. He could find someone else.
Yeah, the adwene foforo na ewo ho biom de na emunya de kra na omo de no mo cheche se opese ujaya wade de a uhu obi foforo na oni gine ho akọ na kofa ene na emunya de kra.
All right. Now, let me give you a little history real quick about the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament.
Mame ma abakosam kakra ntemara ewo Mose wo enum ehoma no abrofo kasem no the Pentateuch no.
Moses wrote all 5 books, Genesis through Deuteronomy.
Moses na chiro sa ehoma num yi. Mose wo medin kan brofo kasa Genesis de kodru Mose wo metosu num no brofo kasa Deuteronomy no.
And those books cover about 2,500 years of history.
Sa ehoma num yi no infiem pimienu hanum eho asem abakosam ana wakuruchire wo sa ahoma num.
So Moses lived at the end of the history, but he wrote about what happened a long time before him.
Moses de otenase ebra na sa abakosam nyina eba na wieye. Nanso so otwere nioma asi nanim kane impo eto ho.
So Moses lived about 1500 BC.
Moses tenase infie apem ahanum ebreso. Yesu Kristo emaye no infie pem ahanum ebreso.
Adam and Eve lived about 2,500 years before Moses, more than 2,000 years.
Adam ene ne yiri Eve nso de otenase infie pimienu ebrumpo infie pimienu mpobro ansa na Moses eyiti.
So God set up his rules for marriage at the beginning. So by 2,000 years later, Moses gave a different or an exception to that original law.
Moses abra Nyankopon eye ne mmara de ma Adam ne Eve no na Moses din saye ana ekwanya bi baye a ebetimi ama obi eja wade.
Now Jesus lived 1,500 years after Moses.
Yesu tenase infie apem ahanumachi Moses echi.
So he's asked a question about marriage. He did not go back to Moses.
Omubusa na semfa wade ho nanso so wantumi kan kọ Moses apenso.
He went back to the beginning.
So
he would restore God's original intention.
Now,
that's what our next Bible verse is going to show. So we read Matthew 19 and we pick up in verse 8. 19. Moses, because of the hardness of your heart, suffered or allowed you to put away your wives, to get a divorce. But from the beginning, it was not so.
Now, say one say, Makuma dinti na Mose ma mo kwan say wunyai mo yerenom. Na mfiti ase anka entesa.
So Jesus is giving a new law, the New Testament.
Yesu ma emra foforo, apam foforo no.
No longer will Moses' law be enforced on people. Moses' law will be the law to be enforced.
Yesu ma emra foforo. Enye Mose emra no na osabe hye nipa bio, nemo oma emra foforo.
And in his law, the law that we live under, he matched the original law of God. He did not go back to Moses, but he went all the way back to the beginning.
Enti wo Yesu ne mmara mu no wankọ Mose die no nemo ode ne mmara no ekọ mfitiase no de nyankopɔn etiri mu ponisi hɔ bio na eno na ɔde toto ho emae.
So verse 9 gives his law, the law for everybody living today, because he rules the world. And we see in verse 9, and I say unto you, I say, that's Jesus, I say unto you, whosoever. Notice that is a term that is not exclusive. It's everybody.
Enti verse 9 no ne mmara ɔde ema na ne mmara na ɔde ma no ɛhyɛ nipa nyinaa na ɛhyɛ yɛ Kristofo nso so. Na oka verse 9 na ɔse intimese mo sɛ enye adwumammɔ nti na obi egyae ne yere na ɔware foforo na wase awade. Nti kasa obi no enye ade a ɛyɛ hiahia a ɛhyɛ obi ebinom na mmom ɛyɛ obia.
So this does not just apply to those who believe in Christ or who are in his church, but to all people.
Wei ade a ɛhyɛ nipa nyinaa enye ɛnhyɛ wɔn a wɔn asafo mu nko na mmom ɛhyɛ nipa wo wiase nyinaa.
Whosoever shall put away his wife, that means divorce.
Obi a ɔbɛgyae ne yere no de ɔka awaregyae ho asɛm.
Except it be for fornication.
Na enye adwumammɔ nti a.
So there is one exception to the one woman, one man for one life rule that God set up.
Enti de ebema obi atimi agyae ne yere eno baako pɛ ana nyanko Yesu Kristo etwe ya gyina so nanso no baako pɛ ana ɛwɔ ha.
So if a husband marries a wife and she is sexually unfaithful to him, she sleeps with another man.
Sɛ ɔbaa bi na bɛrima bi ɛware na ɛnam mu no baako ɛni no kura ma no a.
Then he is free to divorce her and be married to some other woman.
Na wanya akwanya sɛ ɔbɛtete ne ho ana wagyae no na akɔware ɔbaa foforo.
She is not free to marry someone else because she broke the marriage covenant.
Na de ɔbɔ adwaman no ana wani no kure no ɔne de oni ho kwan sɛ ɔkɔware obi foforo efisɛ ɔno na ɛsɛe mmara no ana ɔsɛe apam no.
The genders do not matter. If he was the one who was unfaithful, then she could marry, but he could.
Emfa ho ne ɔbaa ana bɛrima enye no ho asɛm enye sɛ ɔbaa nko bɛrima nko ne timi gya wadeɛ ana ɔbaa nko ne timi gya wadeɛ ɛne deɛ ba mu kura sɛ ɔbaa no a otimi gyae ɔyɛ bɛrima no a otimi gyae.
Except it be for fornication, and shall marry another. So you have A married to B, and now you have A married to C, let's say. So there's a third person involved.
Enti eke adwamammɔ nkuto ebia hwene sɛ ɔbɛrima baako bi akɔware ɔbaa bi na ɔbaa ne bɔ adwaman a ɛne ɔbɛrima baako no timi kɔware ɔbaa foforo a na ayɛ nipa miɛnsa ɛno no.
So you had 1 and 2, A and B married originally. Now they're no longer married. And now A and C have married. And there was no sexual unfaithfulness. They broke up for another reason. These two are living in adultery because he's living with someone that he is not originally married to.
Enti fa ne sɛ yɛ obi ɛne obi a ɔmo hyɛ aseɛ ɛwade yɛ na ɛfɛ nanso so ɔmo tete mu ana awaregya yɛ ba. But the enti a ogya awade no na enye adwumammɔ nti ɛma baako akɔware ɔfoforo saa foforo na ɔkɔkɔware na ɔmo nyɛ no teɛ sɛ awarefo no saa nkɔfo no mienu no ɔsɛe awade efi sɛ the enti a mienu ni di nkan kane mienu ni di nkan egyae awade no na enye adwumammɔ so.
Now, if the second person marries a fourth person, so you have A, B, C, D. These are also living in adultery if there was no original reason to divorce that God approved, which would be fornication.
Enti de egya no na bia na onware ye so no nso na dwene sɛ ɔkɔware ɔfoforo a ɔnyɛ mienu no a aka no ɔno nso kɔware ɔfoforo na de nipa nan aba asɛm no mu a ɛne na wɔn mienu nso so ɔmo mienu nyinaa nso bɔ adwaman efi sɛ ɛkwan kora aware edi nkan no.
All right. One other scenario. So A is married to B, and B is sexually unfaithful, commits fornication. He divorces her, and then he meets another and marries her. They can live together with God's approval because God allows divorce for that one reason.
Enti fa yɛmfa nhwɛso foforɔ nso enya nsua deɛ sɛ deɛ di nkan ɔbarima bi ne ɔbaa bi awareɛ na awareɛ no mu no ana sɛ ɔbaa no ana barima no ɛbɔ adwaman deɛ ɔbɔ adwaman no deɛ ɔntumi nware na mmom deɛ wambɔ adwaman no ɔno no wɔ ho kwan sɛ ɔkɔwareɛ sɛ ɔkɔware a Nyankopɔn pene so efisɛ ɔno na ɛbɔ adwaman no.
And whoso marrieth her, which is put away, doth commit adultery. Now, the verb tense here is a continuing, is a present tense, active, which means that every time they sleep together, it's not just the first time they sleep together, but every time they sleep together in their marriage, they are committing adultery again and again and again. That's what doth commit adultery refers to.
Ɔse wohwɛ enyimu nkron a ɔse na deɛ ɔbɛware deɛ wagya no na wasɛe awadeɛ na ɔtwe adwene gyina so sɛ kabea koro a ɛhyɛ ha no ɛyɛ daa kabea ɛni sɛ daa no sɛ ɔmo te awadeɛ no mu a na ɔmo te adwamammɔ mu ɛnyɛ mprempren ana baako atwa mu kabea bi na mmom ɛyɛ daa kabea ho asɛm.
There are 4 words in this text that are important to understand.
Yɛwɔ nsɛmfua nnan bi a ɛwɔ sɛ yɛte aseɛ na ɛboa yɛn adwene yɛsudusua yi.
One is marriage, the word kiddusin, which means to be consecrated.
Enti deɛ di nkan ɛyɛ awadeɛ a Helafoɔ kasa yɛ kiddusin a ɛkyerɛ sɛ nteho sɛ watew ho.
Consecrated means it's based on commitment, a decision, reason.
Nteho no gyina hɔ ɛma sɛ wode wo ho ahyɛ biribi mu na wowɔ botaeɛ bi a wode yɛ saa deɛ no ɛno ho ne nteho no.
It does not mean that they stay married as long as they feel in love with each other.
Ɛnkyerɛ sɛ atenka kɛkɛ ana wowɔ ma obi nti a wotumi tena awadeɛ mu ɛnkyerɛ saa koraa.
It is a covenant.
Ɛyɛ apam.
The second word is adultery. That word means to have a sexual relationship outside of marriage while being married.
Enti de to so mienu a mepɛ sɛ wohyɛ no nso ɛyɛ awaresɛyɛ a ɛno no ɛne sɛ oni obi ɛkɔda a wawadeɛ sɛ waware na wo aware mu na wofiri wo yire akyi ana wofiri wo kunu akyi ɛne obi kɔda mpa mu asɛm a ɛne na ɛyɛ awaresɛyɛ no.
Hebrews 13:4 says, marriage is honorable in all, and the bed undefiled, but whoremongers and adulterers God will judge. So, go ahead.
Hebrew forma no etire dumiensa na yi mu enan no se woni aware ni ade nyinaa mu na wonwu aware mpa ho fi efisɛ adwamammɔfo ne awaresɛfo de Onyankopɔn bebu atɛn.
So God looks upon the sin of adultery as something to be judged.
Nyankopɔn hwɛ awaresɛyɛ sɛ ɛyɛ ade a yebu ho atɛn.
The third word is fornication. Fornication is similar to adultery, but it is a broader term. Adultery only applies if one or both people are married, but not to each other.
Na deɛ tie ne sɛ adwumammɔ no deɛ ɛyɛ bɔne kakraka a awaresɛyɛ ne hyɛseɛ na deɛ tie nie awaresɛyɛ ne bam ana Bible frɛ nnam nkitahodie bi awaresɛyɛ ɛwɔ abere a nipa baanu a ɔyɛ saa no baako ana wɔn baanu nyinaa awadeɛ but ɔmo nware wɔn ho saa abere no deɛ na Bible frɛ na awaresɛyɛ no ɛno nti na awaresɛyɛ ne hyɛ adwumammɔ aseɛ.
Fornication refers to any sexual union that is disapproved by God.
Awaresɛyɛ adwumammɔ no deɛ ɛkyerɛ nnam nkitahodie biara Nyankopɔn pene so na Nyankopɔn asɛm kasa tia.
It can mean premarital, extramarital.
etimi kyerɛ ma wɔn wareyɛ no wahyɛseɛ ɛdeda anaasɛ wawareɛ na wafa ne yere akyiri ɛdeda.
Or homosexuality or bestiality. All those.
Anaasɛ ɔbarima a ɔne barima da anaa ɔbaa a ɔne ɔbaa da anaasɛ sɛbi ɔbarima a ɔne aboa ɛda.
It refers to a sexual act, not just lust, but to a physical act.
Ɛyɛ ɛnna ho nkitahodie, ɛnyɛ akɔnɔ ho asɛm ana ɛka, na mmom ɛyɛ nna ho nkitahodie ankasa.
The fourth word in this text that's important to understand is the word divorce or putting away.
Deɛ ɛtɔ so ɛnan, asɛm ɛtɔ nsɛmfua ɛtɔ so nan a mepɛ sɛ metwe adwene gyina soɔ ɛyɛ awaregyaeɛ.
It means to cut off, to separate. It's used in 1 Corinthians 7:10, to put away.
Enti ne nkyerɛmu ne sɛ wotiti mu anaasɛ woma no korɔ. Saa ne nkyerɛmu no ɛteɛ. Na saa kasa korɔ no ana Paul ɛyusuɛ ana ɔde yɛ adwuma ɛwɔ Korintofo nhoma a ɛdi nkan no ɛtire nson ne mu du no.
Just as marriage is a legal decision, divorce is a legal decision. So
sɛdeɛ awadeɛ ɛyɛ mmaransɛm no, saa nso na awaregyaeɛ nso ɛyɛ mmaransɛm korɔ no a.
Marriage joins together legally, divorce breaks apart legally. So
mmaramu no awareɛ ɛtwe nipa ɛka nipa baanu ɛbɔ mu yɛ baako. Nanso so awaregyaeɛ deɛ mmaramu no ɛtete nipa ntam.
The next verse in Matthew, I'll cover 3 more verses, but more briefly.
The Bible gyina so fra me pese me twa gyina so Matthew asempante na Matthew twerɛ no. Matwe madwa gyina nsɛmfua mienu Bible gyina so mienu so but mentem so na meye.
His disciples say unto him, so here is a question not from the enemies but from his own disciples who were listening to his answer to his enemies.
Enti wei asɛmusa ba ye no a me betwa madwa gyina so no. Emfi Yesu na tamfo ho. Na mmom wei de Yesu na sidifo no ana na otie Yesu no na won sɛmbisa bi a opese obusa Yesu.
If the case of the man be so with his wife, it is not good to marry.
Na nasuafo no sense onipa ne ne yentam sen asɛm tie saa de a ene ense se wo wade.
What they are saying is if you're going to be that strict about it, then it would be better not to even get married if you're going to be that strict.
Ene on nsɛm a waka no sɛ ewura se saa na wo ka no de a na obey dindindin ɛwɔ nsɛm a wo kan mu de a ene na ense se onipa wade.
So they are overreacting. Because God said it's a good thing. Genesis 2:18. He brought a blessing to Adam. Verse 11, but he said unto them, all men cannot receive this saying, save they to whom it is given. Now, it is important in this text to understand what this saying refers to. He is not saying that all men cannot receive what he said, what Jesus said. What he is saying is all men cannot receive what you just interpreted, just what you just said in verse 10. It's not good to get married. Jesus is saying,
ɔtwe nipa adwene gyina so na ɔtwe adwene gyina so sɛ saa asɛm yi no a ɔka ho asɛm no ɛyɛ asuafoɔ no nkyerɛkyerɛmu a na ɔde ma sɛ na tie de a ɛni kwa se yɛ wadeɛ no ɛno ho asɛm na Yesu Kristo ka na nyɛ ɔno no die na ɔkyerɛkyerɛ no.
Jesus is saying what you just said, that people ought not to get married. Most people are not going to accept that saying because they want to get married.
Jesus in some kind of say, when someone more as young for more church, you say, any quan say, and yes, only power no. and then nipa pii na betimi agya to if he said nipa pii na pese o wale.
Now verse 12.
Mhm.
For there are some eunuchs which are born from their mother's womb. A eunuch is someone who cannot have sexual activity, someone who does not have the ability or that has a physical ailment or problem that does not allow him to get married and enjoy the marriage bed. Now, the second part, and there are some eunuchs which are made eunuchs of men. So there have been those in ancient times that worked in the palace with the queen, and the king castrated them so that they could not be tempted to have a relationship with his queen. And so that's what that's saying. Sometimes men suffer from mutilation. And then the third part, and there be eunuchs which have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. He that is able to receive it, let him receive it.
Well, eti dunum no dumienu no say na eyitutufoɔ bi wɔ hɔ a wɔwo wɔn saa firi wɔn nan yam. Na ɛno na ɔkyerɛ mu atwe adwene gyina so sɛ saa eyitutufoɔ saa no ebi wɔ hɔ a na ɛyadeɛ bi ana ɛbɔ wɔn a nti yɛwo wɔn no na oni ho kwan sɛ otimi ɛyɛ saa. Nti ɛno no na ɔtwe adwene gyina so. Na de toso mienu a ɛwɔ saa Bible gyina so kɔ no mu say na oyitutufoɔ bi wɔ hɔ a nipa ana ayɛ wɔn saa. Ana o ma nkyirase se saa nkofo we mu no enkopuku a ebi wo ho a na mo ye adwuma e wa ahemfie nti nam se wo ye adwuma wa ahemfie ni nti no wasa won na wontimi enye saa adwuma no ana le toso miensa a wo twe adwe agina so eye eyitutofo bi nso a osoro ahemie ni nti wo ye on ho saa na eno na Yesu Kristo nso etwe wadwe agina so se de obetumi age no ma no nye.
So what Jesus is saying is, if you disciples think that people ought not to get married, most people are not going to be willing to accept this.
And the Yesu Kristo etwe esuafo na dwen gyina so se mo esuafo mo cheche se ene enye se oni pawari a ene ni pagina na beji sa asemi atomu.
But there are some who will give up being married and having a sexual relationship because they wish to serve God in a way that would hinder it.
Enti obi wo ho a on wade ana onfo adwen ma wade enam se opese oso nyankopon ni wo esum bi a opese ode ma onyankopon.
A good example of this is the Apostle Paul.
Ebi nhwe so a ye papapa obeti bi di ate ade me kan ase eye osomafo Paul.
So Peter had a wife and she traveled with him according to 1 Corinthians 9, at least some.
Peter ana Petro so de na wo yere ana na ande na otan ni nante ekọ nsem kan ade ade a yehunu e Korintofo homa etenkron na ebere bi wo ha na otan ni nante.
But Paul did not. He traveled so much and was in prison so often, it would have been hard for a wife who was married to Paul.
Na so Paul de na oni yere enti na Paul nso so no mpe bebre no onante na temba ka kwantio bebre mu no na e afiase na nso eka ho na se ka Paul e wo yere a ene ebe hadwene pa yie.
So that's a discussion of Matthew 19, 3 through 12.
Enti enu ya disua na mbesa no ene nkomobo a na mbesa no bo efiri Matthew etidunku ni mu ensa eba edu emienu no.
So I'll review. We found 4 reasons Jesus gave not to get a divorce.
Enti me bo nsam no stofa enema nan bi a Yesu Kristo ede man de nti a eni kwan se onipa gya wade.
The original precedent.
The
command of God to cleave to your spouse. The design of marriage where two become one. And the will of God to remain married throughout life.
And then
And then we saw in the middle part of this chapter that Jesus did not go to teach Moses' law and take that view, but he went back to restore the original plan of God about marriage.
Oba se otwi nipa adwene ɛde Nyankopɔn hyehyɛ a ɔyɛ no edi ntom no esi hɔ bio.
And then we saw last that Jesus gave one reason why one could be divorced and married again, and that is if his or her mate was sexually immoral and he put her away and could be married to someone else.
Ani yehunu Yesu Kristo anu yie a ɔde maayɛ ɛfa deɛ nti onipa betimi aware bio baako pɛ ana Yesu de maayɛ sɛ onipa abɔ adwaman sɛ saa ba mu dia ɛne na onipa wɔ ho kwan sɛ ɔwadeɛ.
Thank you.
Medasi. Brashada, if you are listening to us,
among the shadows, living in a lonely land with strangers, we're a band of pilgrims on the move. Dangers burdened down with sorrows, and we're shunned on every hand, but we are looking for a city built above. Oh, yes, we're looking here and looking for a city under where
Yeah. Brashada, I'll meet you kakra.
Oh, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. That is Brother Alan Webster. Brother Webster, thank you so much for a good job done. Look at what someone just posted. He said, wow, great presentation. Of course, I told you. He was going to give us something interesting. That is Brother Webster for you. He is one of the instructors at the Memphis School of Preaching. Brother Webster, Koku Edu also said, great explanation, very insightful presentation. And then we see Obed Mote saying, Shammai and, well, it's not Hamar, it's Harel. Theory. I like the consistency of the speakers. Of course, almost all the speakers have hinged that, and that is interesting. We have someone clapping for you for your great presentation tonight. And brethren, that is what we're talking about. Good lesson. God strengthen and bless you all. Thank you very much. We have God bless you all, brethren, watching live from United Arab Emirates. That's Dubai. Someone is watching all the way in Asia. Another one from Dubai. That's Richard Amponsa also saying that, good evening, brethren. God bless you for the special teaching, watching you live from Dubai. We have one here from Thomas. I agree. Says, great work. Thanks so much for such messages. Good evening, brethren. Yes, good evening too. We have another one watching from Germany. He says, watching you live from Germany. Kennedy Anoche is watching in Germany. We have Emmanuel Asamoah Boateng. I'm sure you're watching with Linda Ajay in Cincinnati, Ohio, live from the Greetings to Your Family, brother. And we have a Champon say, I really enjoyed this teaching. God bless you. Of course, we all enjoyed it so much this evening. Brother Webster, someone said, wow, congratulations to the speaker. What a knowledge. He has simplified what seems to be confusing, what seems to be a confusing text for us to understand. Well done, bro. And that is coming from Church of Christ TV, one of the administrators. Patrick K.R.B. said, the mystery of marriage demystified. God bless you. God bless you too so much. Obi say, I am late for the class. Yes, you are late. You you will be lashed so much. You have a lot of canes with me. And that is coming from Brother Ebenezer Wools, brother. I hope you're doing well. God bless you from Faustina and Tiamwa. We have Alma Owusua saying now, okay, so we're going to go back to the questions. We'll touch on the questions very soon. Let me say that Brother Webster is one of the people that initially when I went to Memphis School of Preaching, I had hearing what he was saying. So I started paying attention. I guess I wasn't paying attention. And so I was wondering whether Jonathan will be able to really catch up quickly with him, being the first time he's
he did well.
And he did a marvelous job. I must say, he did a marvelous job. One thing that you would have noticed is that there's a pace. Brother Webster he's so much in a hurry to tell you what the Bible is saying, and that's one person that you should always love. He comes to preach with passion, with much knowledge, with so much to share. And I mean, I love such a gentleman, and we appreciate the work that he's doing in the brotherhood. Brother Webster is our guest tonight. But also, so far, you married how many months since you married?
3 months.
So 3 months since you got married. Yeah. So what Brother Webster is saying that when God created man was supposed to live forever, right? And then he added marriage to it. So before the fall of man, God has already allowed them to marry. So the intention was that if they were going to live forever, they were going to be with their wives forever. Yeah, and then until the fall came in and man died. So for you,
to also continue.
Okay, brethren, I think our Brother Webster has rested enough. Let me go back. Now, so do you have anything to say before we come to the question?
Just to remind our audience that this program, even though it's live, it will be on our YouTube channel. You go to the playlist, Digital Lectureship, you find it there. So they should just keep that. Yes.
Yes, and then they should share, right?
Yes. Please
today
share.
I'm not seeing that at
highlight. Yes.
Yes.
So let's do that right now. Or share now in hashtag at highlight at followers at highlight at followers, and you get a lot of people to also get the notification as well. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Danso, for your great work. Brethren, we're going to turn ourselves quickly to the question side. Brother Webster will be ready to answer your questions. If you have a question, please bring it up. Let's ask those questions, and Brother Webster will be able to take time and explain whatever is needful. Brother Webster, if you're ready, thank you so much for great work tonight, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We have a question from this gentleman. Needs to pay some kind of dues to us because he has been so consistent with a lot of questions, and his questions doesn't come in one fold. It comes in multiple folds. And look at this one. He says, question: I have learned deeply throughout this lectureship, especially the importance of marriage for mankind. However, I do not understand why Jesus Christ and Paul did not marry. Were they not humans with feelings? 2, if the marriage is good for mankind, why didn't Jesus and Paul marry to set example for us to emulate them? And number 3, or is there something hidden about marriage that they, as Jesus and Paul, wanted to avoid to enable them live peacefully on earth? That's his question.
All right. I appreciate the question and happy to answer it. I believe the answer to it is the last part of the lesson that we just covered in Matthew 19, verse 12. Some make themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. And Jesus did that. He came with the focus to go to the cross and die for humanity. He knew that his life would be cut short and that he would ascend back to heaven. And he came not to enjoy the pleasures of life, even the legitimate pleasures of life, which would have been in marriage, but he came to focus on doing the will of God, to make himself a eunuch for the kingdom of heaven's sake in that sense, and then he died for us. The same thing is true with Paul, which we mentioned in the lesson, that it would have been very difficult for Paul to have had a wife, and he would not have been able to do a good job at being a husband because he was traveling so much, 12,000 miles in his missionary efforts. He was involved in evangelizing the gospel, several continents, cities all over, and he was arrested in prison for long periods of time. So he chose not to marry. It does not mean that he did not have the passions that others might have, but it does mean that he chose rather to have a spiritual focus in his life. And therefore he did more good than he might have been able to do otherwise if he had a wife to go home to and children to rear in a normal situation.
Yes, sir. And I know a quick question is and send me Papa Eka say what church say our ready a year pa na sa our ready I didn't na Paul any yesu o mo anware I dey no munye nipa na and am feelings and brother Webster say oh no munye nipa o mo feeling na emum de kire say your nkrofo bi o mo ayo man so mo nware enam osoro ahini nti the yesu ba asase so no one person de no for nema e akonosem e wo wiase mu ha na emom di nti a obaaye ne botaye nti a yesoma no e na obaa se omameye nti no e na odi nani si so ne ba Paul so a ono so nam osoro ahini no ho adwuma ene se otutu kwan na ohwe a kwansiri nko a Paul etwaye e wo na kwantu mu no etwamu eye 12,000 nti no se e ba se a na da bia na onam kwan so ebi wo so echi ne to prison a emfe bebre na oda efiase so yire ne ma ye hwa nkase na asetan na ebisi akọ nti ohwe se de adwumadie a onyankopon asafo musitie no a na woyi ne ho afri eye aware esemu enu nti enye se na oni feeling na emum osoro ahenie no intida. There's a follow-up question from another person. He says that a Catholic priest rightly following the last reason for being an eunuch, where it says there are eunuchs who made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. Are they rightly interpreting the scripture this way by not marrying?
I appreciate the question. I think the answer probably would come from 1 Corinthians 7. One who is celibate is not in a holier state of life. Rather, he is putting himself in a place of temptation where there are not normal outlets for the way that God made men. Now, we've just noticed that there are exceptions to that, such as Jesus and Paul. But generally speaking, it is better to marry and to be in a relationship that is holy, Hebrews 13:4, and that is satisfying, Proverbs 7, than it is to be in a perpetual state of temptation or of unfulfillment. And therefore, the preachers in the New Testament, by and large, were married. We don't know the personal lives of most of them, but we do, as we mentioned, know of Peter and his leading about a wife. And we understand that that is within the will of God for preachers to marry. And that's a real help to them in having a companion to encourage them and to work with them in the vineyard and to help with the children and bringing up children that'll be great servants in the kingdom after in the next generation.
Yes, sir. Nti you know about a question or say and you be society there na say na Roma asofo no so the omo ye no so ne kwan so an no say wo mo so omo nware nti na so omo church the Bible mu ye na brother Webster say or dana say ne question a obusae na mu de tie ne say wo hwe Bible mu Nyankopon hwe say ye nware na ye ninyi awade mu na aware no mo ye ni ntumi nya ahohye bi ewo ye asetran mu eti so obi hye say onware a na so onware na so betima trans say the Paul ni Yesu trans na ene nkaye na emum say wo so onware no na wo de ohun ewurawura eye adwama semu nneɛma woyɛ nneɛma bi a ɛmfata deɛ ɛna nanka woware ya nanka wadwo ano ama wo ho atɔ nti ɛho hia sɛ yɛbɛware sɛ yɛware a asɔfoɔ ware a ɛboa ma wɔn nso tumi de nipa a wɔn soro nyame no mbɛsum nyame wɔ na asafo mu nso so ɛba ewiase nti ɛno ɛna brother Webster ɛde ɛto hɔ ɛmaa. We have another question from Thomas. I agree. He says a Christian sister, the husband is dead. Okay, if there's a Christian sister and the husband dies, can she marry an unbeliever?
My answer, my understanding of the scriptures is that she would not be acceptable. She should not marry an unbeliever. 1 Corinthians 7:39. But it's also my conviction that no Christian should marry outside of the Lord, because why would one give put oneself in a position where the most influential person in their life does not share the most important things in life? They do not have the same goals of going to heaven. They do not go by the same authority in life, which is the Bible. They will disagree on many things about child rearing, about priorities, about vacations, about what kind of entertainment they will enjoy. So it's foolish for one to marry outside of the Lord. And really, in my estimate, one would obviously have to study the scriptures for himself or herself, but one is not putting the kingdom of heavens first when one marries outside the church, Matthew 6:33. And they're also not fulfilling. If I'm understanding passages like work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, we should be very careful about going to heaven. It's not easy to go to heaven, even if we have a companion that will assist us in that. But it is very hard to go to heaven without that. Some are able to do it, and we encourage them, want to build them up. But that would not be a recommendation for this preacher.
Very well. And Obi Busase, I agree. Thomas, I agree. Busase, entino na Obi eware Obi kunuwa ese or ware wasafunu na brother Webster say, well, if a Bible no cancel the Bible say, oh ukunuwu dia asafunu ena ese o ware nemum yehwa ade no kra no a Kristo ni pa no ka ensese o ware ewo eye abonten isan say sebi eburu nyansam bia ennim se obeware wo abonten sanse nipa akọware no edu vacation a ono wonya adwene ba entertainment ho a de na yemfa ngigi ani a ono wonya adwene enema bebro ho a wone no nya adwene ho empo osoro ye ahini ho adwene no ono wonya adwene ho nti se okọware no a ya tete ankasa na wo ankasa wode wo ho etumu enti no ono de osusu se ade ba kompo a kutia and the Bible say yemfa suro ne ahopo nye ya nkwaje ho adwuma enti sa wodi suro ne ahopo ye wa nkwaje ho adwuma denti na esa kɔware wo bi a ɔno no ɛmɛboa ma untimi nkonkan esan sɛ ɔno ni gidie baako mu ɔno ani da so no enye baako na wobɛkɔ akɔware no de aha wo ho enti osusu sɛ enye nyansa kwan so sɛ o kristoni ɛbɛware obi a onye kristoni. We have
how do you remember all that? Wow.
Well,
oh, that's quite impressive. Quite impressive.
Thank you, sir. So we have another question. What of the case of fornication that the other spouse is? What's the case of that the other spouse is denying? So I guess I'm not too clear with this question, but I don't know whether you get it. He says that what of the case of fornication that the other spouse is denying? Okay, so for example, if my spouse is denying that I've not had any affair with any person, what happens if he doesn't admit?
That's a difficult situation. Let me just go around in a circle and think about some different answers or some different factors in the answer to this question. I do not believe that one has to see the adultery taking place. You know, there is certainly that would be a rare thing. And sometimes one will not admit it because of embarrassment or because of the ramifications of admitting it when it has taken place. So one would have to be completely convinced that it is beyond a reasonable doubt that the spouse has committed adultery. And it may be that they have to wait for some time for the facts to come out of what may have already occurred. And a lot of times, eventually, those facts do come out. They may enter into an immediate marriage with someone else or move in with them. And then it doesn't take a Solomon to see what had been taking place before that. And so one would definitely have to weigh that situation very carefully, because you don't want to put your soul in jeopardy if you're wrong and you just suspect that they have committed adultery. You need to have evidence of it, or you need to have a really strong reason to believe that has taken place.
Great. Ama ebusa say so ukoware obi na wakobo adwaman na nso nipa na say ono omo adwaman da wo beka o si chinchina nchi ono ompene omo adwaman a sa no wo be ne den. And brother Webster say, well, den kakra say obetima aka say wo yi sa asem we understand say ne adeban no enye better sa na emom de obeka na say den ya adwaman no wakobo a den ya ite say sebi aboa awusoro na de an ntakra ebeba fom enti ontwen kakra na ewomu a me nana we me nana ne kan wo say ewodo a ebeba ewomu a ebeba ama eho abedan edi say adwaman no wakobo na eho hia say oto bo ase na uhwemu yie san say ye ka wo kra aho asem nkwaje ho asem enti say wo no tutu mampamrika ekoja awade san say nipa no waye ususe wakobo adwaman na say no kremu omo adwaman a na say wo nkwaje na wanhwe a wo de to eye asemu enti na obesre say wo beto bo ase no one make sure say wo evidence no ansa na obeka say wo ja awade na wajai na oto bo ase a eden a saa eye adanse no ebeba bedan edi ama wonso uti asan. I think she brought another question. Are all marriages marriage? Okay. Are all marriages marriage? I don't know what. Okay, so she does a follow up with it. She said, if we consider those in diaspora who marry for documentation's sake, so that people marry, they come to the US, they don't want to get out, so they fake marriages to get documentation. And I mean, not Ghanaians. I'm not saying Ghanaian. I'm talking about Mexicans. Okay, Brother Webster, Mexicans. In this case, I'm trying to shield my Ghanaian brethren. So, if someone fake marriages because he wants documentation, will that constitute marriage?
That is a difficult question, but I would just say this. I would say first, one should not lie. If it's not a marriage, it's a lie. So either way, it's sinful. So it ought not to be practiced. So if one is going to try to enter into a country that he or she does not have a legal right to, and so they lie about a marriage, and then they get into that country, well, that's a sin in of itself. And I think it also reflects poorly on marriage. Marriage is a great institution designed by God. It is to be treated with dignity. It's not a plaything. It's not just something that is to facilitate some other aspect of life. So I would be very uncomfortable with saying that anybody who has entered into a marriage, even under the wrong pretenses, has the right to marry somebody else. One should not marry unless they intend to be married.
Yes, sir. So Ama is also asking again that worry about Tena, Womo Ekoyan Krata, Ewo Amambi, so Seve Obedian Krata Atana Hono. almost say our there now. I say intro ultimate I say our there name or intro. Ne basa egu aware anymore as sans aware ade onyamede siw animunyam mu na ukodi intro fa ho sa na egu no animo ase nti no yen hye no so sa. All right, let's proceed to the other question. It says a parent forced their daughter to marry one man at a tender age without their daughter's consent. The lady is now of age and realizes she can't be with a man. Is she free to remarry?
That's not a question I've been asked before. So I will give it the caveat up front that one would need to study this question with more than just surface, which is what I will give because I've not studied this before. But I will give you some verses and some thoughts to begin your study on this subject. One, the question would need to be asked, does the man that she married have other wives first, which often may be the case? Or is he divorced? And does he have more than one wife and she was not the first wife? Or has he been divorced and she's married to her? She was given to him after that. That would be something to be considered, because if he did not have the right to marry in the first place, could it have been a marriage to her? Now, in the second place, again, we think about the importance of the dignity and honoring marriage. That would play a part in this, because in some cultures, arranged marriages are acceptable. They are the general rule. And those marriages certainly count, even though the person might not have originally agreed to it or known about it or made his or her own personal choice. So I don't have a concrete answer for this question. Maybe one of the other speakers on the program will, but that would be a good start, I think, to considering what to do.
Onuano question obusane say enti akwala usana ya force no man worry obi say onyini na fe obehunu like na adwumu ebebie na ohusa aware no wo mu no ompe a otumi jai awade ana and brother Webster say asem no the question I know den kakresan say eniani nkwa na ibetima hu na yedomu sukwa and a bit matia see nanka yedi ano intino asem no edda ejina brane ejina said the nipa no ni situation no esi etie na ye wo baby wo hono mo a ye wo arranged marriage kire say you see asiwa na usa no ano na ye si wasiwa na ye say wunyine a na ya ware ede amount na no no say ebiduruba sa bre no a even though ebia wo mpe nipa no kra no still say utumi ekna aware misan say wo mo hihye mu no enye wo na ebia ese wo je etum na waware enko a eye abusua no ene edom no nyina na arrange na wakwa akowura saa awade nti no oni anu ye poten ema saa semisan say da baby kra asem no esie and I'll be to imagine so the akasa asem no. We have is it true that okay, Kokodu, you keep bringing this question. I think we have answered it. Yes, in the United States they don't practice polygamy. Okay, you marry one and that's it. So Kokodu, if you want to go to the United States, no. And not only there, if you want to go to heaven, you can't have two wives. It's only one. So I think this one I can answer for Brother Webster. I think I saw another question up there. Let me see. Okay, so I have this. I don't know whether it was a question or a comment. Okay, I guess it was a comment. We'll read that later. Brother Webster, I guess you've done justice to your subject, and it's clearer. When you look at all the questions that are coming, it seems they are kind of tangential because of the good work you have done. And so we would like to appreciate you so much for. So you are preaching tonight as well, right?
I am, yes.
Wow.
I taught a class this morning in Psalms for an hour and a half, and now I've taught this afternoon. Tonight I get to preach the Word of God. So what a blessing!
Wow.
Busy.
So
Good day.
did you teach some in the school or maybe in a church?
I'm teaching Psalms in the Georgia School of Theology. That's I'm teaching those two schools. So the Georgia school starts earlier than Memphis. So we started today was the first class. So introduction to Psalms today.
Okay, so Brother Wester, you know the deal. I'm going to send you the books that I would like to have. I mean, those that you've penned down in your remarkable Bible, and then you email those ones that you can export, and then send it to me. Or probably we can do some kind of exchange with your iPad, and then I'll have all the information here.
I'm sure we can. We'll work it out. Yeah. Did you have my Matthew class?
I think I was done with Memphis School of Preaching, the 2-year program, and so what I did was to join the first years during your teaching, and then I got some information on that, and then I also had some from the book of Mark, which was great.
Well, I've added some more, but you already have some of this if you were in Matthew, but I have added. It's always changing, always getting a little better.
Yes. Yes. We really appreciate the great work that you're doing, and it is so awesome seeing you. We just hope and pray that people like you don't just age. You just stay where you are and keep preaching.
I love it.
Sir, we appreciate you.
It's exciting to be on the program and to see so many people being influenced in so many places. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. It's a blessing. And I wish you Godspeed in the work. Keep it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We appreciate you, sir. Brethren, that was Brother Alan Webster. He is the one doing a whole lot of things in heart to heart. And he has a team of brethren who assist, and then they're doing a great job polishing the pulpit. If you have heard about that, he and two other people came together and started that. That was awesome. And I have been at the polishing the pulpit, I think 3 times or 2 times, one of them, and I have really enjoyed the program. And I hope those in the US, those in the UK and Europe, every year you can choose August or I think June. Brother Webster, the one that you're doing in Missouri, that is in June, right? Is it Missouri?
July.
Missouri. July.
Yes. Next year will be July 16 through 20 or 21, 2025.
Yes.
So a week later next year than it was this year.
Oh, okay. So if you are in Europe or in the US and you want to go for vacation, I will strongly entreat you to make PTP a vacation for you, where you don't just go and enjoy yourself in the fellowship with brethren, but you also study God's word and be, there's something you say in PTP. You say what?
Renew, refresh, recharge.
Renew, refresh, recharge. So you come there, you renew your spirit, you refresh yourself and the knowledge that you've acquired, and then you get charged for the rest of the year. So you meet again at the next PTP. That is how awesome the program is. Brother Webster, we appreciate your time. We wouldn't want to take much more. We thank you for joining. We hope next year you will join us again, sir.
Thank you. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. Brethren, me wo Jonathan wa ha me wo dan so e wa ha nom we emrante chese erade akuchiri wo mo ede wo mo adwuma or charity. So masa ede na akoso ne.
Excellent.
Yeah, Nyoma koso.
But by the way, Jonathan, mami ndi kembo wa baso answer no ato comment na ba no abo adwuma pa. But baby wo ma
now, so but yeah, but yeah. But I want to tell you something. Listen, listen, Brother Webster taught me something. He said, if you want to criticize someone, use what we call sandwich approach, where you tell the person the good things that he has done, and then you talk about what he has done, which is not right, and then you end with good things. So it's more like you put the bad thing in the middle and empty. So don't be quick to criticize him. He's done well.
Manikasa, what's it?
The America can only say, oh, tenses, no send you, oh, yeah, cabia, do what cabia, we cabia, and I'm say, now we are cheaper, Shadrach, getting there, on cabia, be and TSU.
Said that, you know, Mammy Chu, me, and then number two. So, you know, one more tea, or we are bang, Eastern region, or me that dear so cheap. Maybe you know,
yeah, I mean, can comment be why the model corner when I mean can't comment. I'm in because my friend will say, "Mummy, more you know." I won't even be good anymore. My hard end translation reputation.
But Sadak, Name pa dear Nekoso.
Joe, watchna confusion amanfo bebree ebusa se na se ma ware na me ne be ma no nya na ya ware ana. There are a lot of people who are asking that question, and we anticipate say beba into you designing a topic for it into ochina no consummation of marriage. When is someone married? When is someone married? Ebrebe ne kase obi aware. Eyebra woni be ma na ada ena yebeka sa fe de omo aware. Ana se wo mo etinsan krata na se yeje ensa no na ebusuafo hia eno ena ya awade ana. Iti no china no we're going to take time for the Bible to speak. Enti yenua and the assistant director of Memphis School of Preaching, brother Billy Bland, ena ebeba na wabechrechere on that subject,
Yo, me da say ochi adwenya ntie nya no hwe na say na obi kasa o message you know. Now obi so busa say ebrebe na ye program no it's from the 1st to the 11th.
Yeah.
Die boma till Sunday. Na tadi for ne be kasa ye boma till la. Ye bomusa till Sunday. Nti na me pa e kina so say na ye bread tie 7 o'clock PM Ghana time na yeah, call live. It's about more nation so just set alarms on your phone. I never call betima yeah, but my you call live betima joining in say notification. You go YouTube now set it. Also subscribe. You can set a notification bell to remind you of it. Instead say you send the link abro na what joining your notification bell will just notify you now. We're gonna remind you now so joining in. Into your and
you shall see, you know, for if we say shy the at Nebeka, most people were not notified earlier. Tia share near the account at highlights.
That's what can highlight here. Papa be a trophy Hashville, Netty okay. Or say, I think Danso can teach that that topical, can teach that too. Ask him if his consummation has taken place.
I know you.
Ama catcher it say ama worry no now look so sweet. Ama worry no look more sweeter. Into the Diakosubiana asasa no. Now so you bet me put into the consummation and a horror there actually you become home.
Fun class I showed them.
Jonathan also somebody love the background voice in our background. Omano Jonathan Omano say what 2 say 3 Omano
Ekumi.
And I'm for a canvas. For baby, I'm saying there's someone who will be a question. They will say, this program will take how many days, please? The program is taking 11 days. In terms of Obi ma answer, yeah, charity technician ma answer no. Say a kwa kwesiada. You be kwesiada until you may be no. Due data, more moto a friend saying Indomino. Say open so tea you may dear bomarding na Indomino suspended. A court next week Monday. Netiminya sika eto data nehwe na eno no problem no eno no problem no nanso so no ema eno ensi okwan bomoden na eto bi na ehwe eye dwumade ni jo. I wish I can read other comments that are coming in, but it seems okay, I have this one. It said watching live from Takwa Achampim. I hope Achampim, yeah, I hope I got it right. We have Obi Soso Chro Mexicans only, a country called Ghana. In fact, I was for South Africa, that was an expensive joke. I retract that. Me and I'm kind Miss Amitre saying, if it's a Ghana for everybody now, so ASR Neamano, and you're Mexico phone call. I was just kidding until Mr. Monfanchemi. Please come early tomorrow. God will, okay. That was not us. When we into the cast, I will say, oh, I missed today's lesson. Just 1 month, why late? Why late? We yes, come early tomorrow. I was for we my kind of them
yeah. Ade ba ko so betima boa nso ni say, you see, until you have match we are sometimes I hear highlight. You have match we are, you heard match ni we are, that say highlight the boy me timiti nyoma see. Edi adofo function wa dwunu say on YouTube no videos ni na e ho sesi a.
Yes.
You can go back and check them on YouTube and rewatch them. Ebeboa.
Yo, my country I force a date, any theme for next year digital lectureship about by Canada. Nyame pa Saturday. Next year digital lectureship no. We have the theme, we have the date, and so we will share with you, God willing, Saturday. Saturday back to back. I force Saturday no. But modern pay data, 2 speakers. Brother Jankase will speak first. We are not brother Joshua Edu, and so Eddie Atwaso. Until back to back. It's a beche kakra nyame adoma Saturday. Bojaye. It's an oba no edidi. Na what data so go. It's a Saturday no and December koso. You be panel discussion kitwa bi. Na ye de yi ensem ahodo a abeba no ano entini nyame adoma Saturday de ebeko so eno no nya Sunday yo Sunday adwumadi ene to say
yes special podcast for ladies, podcast for ladies, challenges ladies face in relationships, and it's going to be very, very insightful. Say okay, line up ne crampa dance here. On Sundays, special podcast, only ladies section, and very, very nice. To your baby, yes. Let's notify our sisters to join. Yeah.
I was for Kwaku do sad ababi say, please bring the written highlights on Facebook for us. You did it for the first speaker, yes. Kwaku do and I'm pipeline anymore. And what you might any better, Kogodu. And what you might better, you know. You start your blood pressures, cholesterol. And I just say, you reach me dinner. Yeah, the star highlights in no ebeba. Inti ye yentumu ye, every night, sheshe, ya guha, ya bomo de na ya ye ediaba. Jumana ye, no, so, uda sorry, ya na, we are ye, ubitimada. Na SB 12 6 oh sorry I want to near my one say a time was yes I hear you a charity in Jessica mo bia oh enti dodo no ano SI omo adwuma na enumu no mufa edidi hwe omabusua nti no it is a tough thing to combine all that. Nti eya na moto mbo asekakra na mo me ebre na etumi ahyehye saa ne ma no enso ede amamo. Nti no ye beda mo ase bebre. Joe, thank you so much for interpreting for us, Dan. So we appreciate your work so much, and it has been a great night, Brother Webster. And then man nine be Brother Webster, you know, all shots and okay, kind minimum Joe. So okay, born name man nine be so interesting part from the text, you know.
Yeah, okasa fa Nyankopon a design, so God designed Nyankopon a will. Nyankopon
baby okanya
Nyankopon precedence, the God of
precedent, yeah.
Nyankopon command, Nyankopon a design.
Yes, we natural 4 reasons why divorce is unacceptable. Or say the original precedent, the command of God, the design of marriage, the will of God. Yes, that was so wonderful. Now, Joe, what can say me say? Idua udi glue bo idua mu tarea. Edu time awo wire we den ya ba ko be wire ka ba ko ho. Enti no sounds na warija yetie. So we jaya yes, mo warrior, mo kabum. It is also be jaya who say mo titi mo.
You come from it mo pama ye titi mu a na
I don't know on pese be kan e kam bomu a.
Dem ma fam. Fam. Mr. Fam ne mo di o bomu de is fam ne ready.
Ye kam fam
key lecture.
Enti mo titi mo e den a ba ko be wire ka ba ko ho. Ana se ba ko ehun betwitwi enti no awarija ye de enye enti ne say a bone of your bone, flesh of your flesh. For this has been Digital Lectureship 2024 tonight edition, no, and on Ochana 7 p.m. we'll be back. Kai say we are only asking, have you not read? Good evening and thank you for watching.
Among the shadows, living in a lonely land with strangers, we're a band of pilgrims on the move. Dangers burdened down with sorrows, and we're shunned on every hand, but we are looking for a city built above. Yes, we're looking here and looking for a city underwhere. Savior, glory and